Hi everybody. I believe the stream is working now. So please, if the sound is working, can you just type something into the chat? Uh, I'll be happy to find out, but it should be okay. I'll just wait 5 minutes before, like, if there's coming anybody. Okay. Mm, I moved the event from the JIT service to YouTube to be able to record it. But now I don't have the feedback, so I hope it's gonna be okay. I'm just keeping an eye on. Hi Suhosh. Okay, that's nice. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat, and I have the like all the setup on these screens all around me, so hopefully I won't be looking away from the camera too frequently. I didn't prepare any elevator music. Hopefully, yeah. I think we can start in a minute. Yeah. Meanwhile, maybe if we want. Ah, this is the wrong presentation. Great time to create the bug. Yeah, this should be better. Meanwhile, if you want, you can add your bio to the website of Open Publishing Fest so that others can find you and see what you do and stuff like that. It's possible to add yourself to an event even if you are not the host of the event. So if you want to, do it now or anytime, basically. Yeah. Yeah, and the link is in the description of the video. Okay, so it's 4 minutes past 6. So yeah, let's start. Uh, this is gonna be a demo uh, of a thing we are working on, and also there's gonna be a publishing reading futures overview, and that means something about things that could be accomplished using something that we work on right now. So let's start. Uh, First, a little bit about me. I'm Jan. I've been working in academia, in web agency, basically always working with digital technology and some kind of social problem. Uh, I have a background in social sciences, stuff like that. You can find more about me at my website. And now to next book. Next book is something that we work on for 4 years. It's a web publishing platform, and it works on the open web. Uh, Back in 2016, my friend asked me, then working for a small publishing house, asked me, let's work on an interactive book and let's put it on the web. But we found out that maybe we could just work on a book because interactive book requires a lot of work from the author, and we just had the possibility of working only on the technical level, just putting in text into a medium. So there came a twist because we found out that just putting text into a digital book on the web is kind of complicated, and also working with any kind of format of a digital book is kind of lame. So we tried to create something of a digital book on the web, and we meanwhile discovered a possibility of maybe creating a platform where books like that can be published. 4 years later, we can say that nobody knew that books could be so complicated. And also, there's 4 of us. We founded a non-profit, and we are trying to somehow try to find out a sustainable model of how that non-profit could live and create the platform. So before we start with the demo and stuff like that, I'd like to define what we see as a book, because of course book can be many things. I have actually written down here that we don't see a documentation, a manual, encyclopedia, or a textbook as something that we define as a book for this project. That doesn't mean that it's not a book. Just for next book, for web books, we see that it's not useful just to create a new format for encyclopedia because of Wikipedia, for documentation because of the documentation frameworks and stuff like that. We care about books that one would want to read completely. So novels, long reads, articles from academic journals and stuff like that. Basically, the focused reading is the main thing about next book. This session is going to be a demo, then the futures, and then Q&A. And of course, you can add the questions to the chat anytime. I will try to check it out here and then. So now to the demo time. Maybe you looked on our website. There's a bit of info, and it's kind of hard to get the concept just by reading stuff like that on the internet. I tried to describe what a webbook is, but it ends up in a very long article, and it's honestly too complicated. So maybe something like this demonstration could be better. So at first, you can look at a book as we have a prototype right now. This is a book in Czech, and I do it on purpose because you just see the format, you don't see the words. Of course, if you don't speak Czech, hi Suchoš. This is a cover. There's a button with open the first chapter title. I can click on it and it just opens the first chapter. You can see that it looks like a book in a way that the paragraph ends in a there's something missing. But if you scroll, it works okay. It's just a normal website. Of course, if you want to read in a focused way, you may want to use pagination. In that case, you just use pagination. And that's the big thing, maybe. So you can just go through the book and see how it works. Basically, we wanted to recreate the model of how the books behave in current wave of e-readers or e-reading apps and stuff like that, just to make it work on the web. So there are some useful stuff like buttons that are invisible you can use to tap on mobile. There's a progress bar. I will kill this for now. There's a progress bar where you can see how far you've read in the book. So if you scroll like this and back and forth, you see it's moving down there. And on the right side, you can see there's like 0 minutes left in chapter, 7% read of a book, and you are in some position in the book. That's kind of important, but it's just one of the things that make it a book. We of course support some notes, and of course you can work and create some notes, not only gibberish, and stuff like that. You can then see your annotations and an interface. You can add notes, you can set the font size, you can navigate through the book, through a table of contents, stuff like that. So basically it looks like a book, it just works in a browser. That's all. There's another book I can show you, and that's Thoreau's Walden, and also it just looks like a text in a browser, nothing special about it. Besides, you can create a text that looks nice. So the typography is okay, pictures are okay, and the interface should be keeping you focused on the text. So basically that's all. I can show you how the book looks like inside. Uh, it's just several files with contents. Also nothing special. And there's a software that builds it into a book. So basically like any other framework for building static websites. So far, it's pretty basic. I see the question. Uh, so far, it's pretty basic. I can see the question. Are these annotations or are these user comments? Are they mediated? This book I have here. I will just make the text a little bit smaller. I don't want to mess with the window size because of the stream. These are just the comments I edit myself, because this book is just served to myself, and we didn't have implementation of any kind of sync. So far these are my comments, and these are available only to me. But I will get to the part where we can work more with it and sync it to other users, and possibly for me milestone there is in which I can gift my friend a book with my comments in it, or stuff like that. So far these are just comments from myself, similarly to a Kindle or something like that. And feel free to ask more. So much, that's the demo. It's just a website in form of a book. Why? Why do we do that? Why do we present it as some kind of breakthrough? The web book is something of a website with some enhancements that make it easier to read it focusedly, in a focused way, and some rules, or perhaps in the future standards, that create an open platform where more is possible because more people use it. So yeah, and self-deprecation humor, yep, it's just a framework for websites, yeah, that adds some functionality that makes it easier to read. Also, the open platform aspect is important because it allows all these buzzwords, and not only buzzwords, but having an open standard, for example, like HTML or stuff like that, allows you to create new stuff that wasn't possible before. Next book, we wanted to create an implementation that's just one implementation of a future standard. Sometimes through those 4 years, standards came and were created meanwhile, because the web goes fast. So, for example, packaging is now kind of solved. You can serve a book as a file through packaging format that is usable in current testing versions of Chrome. And stuff like manifest that contains a description of the book and its files was created by W3C, but kinda shelved in summer last year. So there are developments, sometimes successful, sometimes unsuccessful, but all these are things that can create an environment where publishing books on the web is nice, workable, and desirable for users. Mm-hmm. Click. Yeah. Uh, so far, I've shown only the book part of the standard or of the vision. And of course, every book platform needs also distribution channels, well, some distribution channels, and some services. We believe that putting the books on the web and setting up some basis for the services, for example, some syncing protocols and stuff like that, and creating something that distributors can use to publish books and or sell books. So these things together can create a platform that creates bounds and also defines possible evolution of the books, because it allows many things in some kind of constraints. For example, if I want to distribute a book, I should be able to see how it's structured, uh, what are the ways of how the readers can use it and stuff like that. And yeah, is the platform indexable? There is a question. Thinking of aggregators and indexes like Google Scholar, EBSCO, and stuff like that. Of course, because every book is just a website, so it has an URL, and you can just access it like any other thing. Of course, you can put it behind a paywall and make it accessible only by inserting some kind of credentials, but still it has a URL, and every copy you make has this URL inside, so it's traceable to one single location, perhaps. But still, yeah, there are still doubts. Uh, and I have one other way how to see how books on the web are kind of economical or feasible, and in many other ways useful. Traditionally, book is seen as the text, so you can just open the book and there's some kind of text in it, and that's the book. Of course, every book has also uh, the body, the thing that holds it together. I don't know. You can see how it has a cover and stuff like that. And traditionally in software, you can always see there is the text, and it's somehow uh, disembodied. You can just pull the text out and digitally serve it, so that every user has a different device, but they have the same text. Our goal is to pull book out of this box, defined by paper or a reader, and get it to the web. And there's a twist. Of course, the web is also a box, but the difference is that it's more similar to the paper than to the e-reader, because the paper allows you to do anything. You can create a book that has torn out pages. You can typeset texts in any way that wasn't possible before. You can just use the page any way you want. You can create a new way of packaging. You can bind together very different parts and stuff like that. For most books, that's not so interesting, but for some books, these creative possibilities are primary. And for most books, also it's interesting that you can, for example, create an edition that looks like several books that look similar. So, for example, for distributors, this can mean that they can publish editions that are somehow recognizable on the shelf, or after I read it, I can remember this was that book because it has a definite type to it, feeling to it, and stuff like that. So the open web brings these possibilities and also uncovers some possibilities that were like bounded by the e-reader. In a way, it's similar to usage of the platforms that were useful on the web a long time ago. For example, as the Adobe Flash. Uh, that was useful because it allowed many things when the web was young, let's say. But right now, it's completely replaced by open technology, and because of that, many more things are possible on the web than were in like 2005, maybe. So the web currently is the most open platform that hosts applications, books, applications, documents, and stuff like that. But still is not very usable when you want to read through a long document. So that's what we want to change. So presentation is kind of slow, but the next part should be quicker. Yeah, possible futures. This is the other part of the presentation, and my first idea that I put in here. The possible future is that we will use the PDF format in virtual reality. From my perspective, that's kind of nightmare. Uh, but similarly, using a Kindle in virtual reality is weird. Yeah. Uh, of course, it's absurd, but the idea that I use a book format that is bounded by a very strict rules, and not only for readers but for publishers, that's for me kind of weird. So the other futures I will present now uh, are based on the expectations from the open web platform. For example, the basics are that the readers can read everywhere. You can use any device because almost any device now has a browser, and because of how the browsers are currently developed, every device has most of the time a current browser. So everything that was developed in like last 2 years is available to 90% of the web users on any device they use, on a very slow Android device or a slow iPhone, uh, anything. The other thing is, as a reader, I can use various web tools when reading, browser enhancement extensions, or services that work like that somehow connect to the service via API and stuff like that. And for example, when I'm a researcher, I want to sync my notes to an analytic tool such as AtlasTI and stuff like that, and just on the other screen see my notes and organize them. Meanwhile, I'm reading. This is very similar to how researchers work with paper books. You can just read a book and then have a paper where you write up notes. Right now, if you want something like that, you can do it with Zotero and sync it with iPad, but always it's a chain of few options that are somehow routed into very closed formats, or for example, paper-based PDF and stuff like that. Another possible future is, of course, sharing notes between a reader and another reader. But more interestingly, could be if I could share my notes with someone who doesn't see and so uses the audiobook. So, of course, everybody uses audiobooks now, so it doesn't. No one doesn't need to be blind to use an audiobook. But bridging these worlds via a format that allows sharing notes via the same platform could be nice. Yeah. Another thing for a reader is to think about browsing a friend's library. And that's a thing that's quite easy when I am around a friend's library like this. But it's very hard when seeing his Kindle or her Kindle, because the Kindle is kind of a computer, so you don't see inside, you don't expect to browse through the books and stuff like that. On the open web platform, we could perhaps create a way how to visit the others' libraries. Of course, you can use Goodreads and stuff like that, but when it's an open platform, anybody can develop a solution like this and create an environment where this is possible. For designers, of course, the main idea is to take the designers, book designers, to the world where everything that's possible on the web is possible in a book. That's kind of wide, but yeah, it's quite simple. Right now, when you design a book for Kindle, you basically paste the text in, and that's all you can do. When you work with EPUBs, frequently there are things that are not supported in many implementations, so you have to try out various combinations and then run the EPUB check, and then there's the book, but your creative potential kinda is minimal. Mm-hmm. Typesetters can wake up from the nightmare, but of course the web is kind of bad at typesetting so far, so they wake up into a new nightmare, but maybe there is a light at the end of the tunnel, because of course, because the platform is open, and maybe you can write a mail to CSS working group or stuff like that. For publishers, I mentioned that it could be nice to create a digital edition that is recognizable. You can do it now. You can create a web service and publish the books. Penguin does that, and many services do that. So it's possible, definitely, but these books are different for every publisher. So every publisher needs a service. Every reader needs to subscribe to many services, and it ends up, for example, for the reader, the experience is completely destroyed, and things I expect in one library are not possible in another, stuff like that. And of course, for the public library, the possible future is not being crushed by digital oligopolies. That's the reality for schools, books festivals, book clubs, bookshops, etc. Many institutions, for predominantly the public ones, are currently crushed by the digital evolution, because the evolution does not care about the public. I think this is a wider problem, and we cannot solve it by creating an open platform for HTML books or stuff like that. But without it, it's impossible. Without an open platform, it's impossible. With the open platform, it's thinkable. So perhaps the public library then can create community experiences. For example, we are imagining the public sync server where everybody can send out their notes. This could be usable by libraries with their book clubs, for schools with the working learning groups and stuff like that. And of course, the books can evolve. Books can respond to the needs of authors and become more accessible. I will get back to the respond to the needs of authors, because the needs can also be creative impulses that evolve the book as a format. Because so far we are like in 1460, like 15 years after the book printing press was discovered, and we cannot imagine how the books will look like in 1600. Yeah. So just creating a platform that is open and where reading can evolve is valuable in itself. Well, 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 that's it. I'll be happy to answer questions, and I'll be happy if you type it inside right now. We have a website, so of course, if you want, you can check it on the URL next book.info. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter. I'll be happy to work together with anybody who writes in on Twitter or email or something like that. We are trying to create a documentation and testing, and of course, we are trying to make it all sustainable. So we are looking for partnerships that allow us to create books and not only have enjoy the creation, but of course to sustain the non-profit we have, so that we can work on the platform more and more. I'll be happy to discuss anything and share the publishing joy and fun. And that's it. So I will wait for a minute, for a few minutes, if there are any questions. And that's basically it. I will meanwhile go through the book, so I can choose. You can see all the things that are possible. For example, one thing that's possible in the book, on the that it's just another functionality to go through the book. If you read and you stop somewhere, I stopped here, and then you go to the index page. You get this small. I can see it. I can find it in the English one. You can see this little modal dialogue, and that says you read up to the sentence in the book, and you can continue from here, or you can return back. That's nice, for example, when you are going to check some other place in the book, or just close the book and return. Yeah, so you can return back to the part of the book where we were. That is normal in ebook readers, and we just implemented it the other way. I see that the stream has a little delay on my other computer, so I will wait a few more minutes, but I think we covered it all. One other funny thing we discovered when working on the first book back in 2016, it was a non-fiction book that one may not want to read through consecutively, and I want to read chapter 6, then chapter 4, and maybe something gets me interested and I read chapter 9, for example. So we designed functionality that makes me aware that I just opened a chapter that I didn't open ever before, and that makes me aware that the paragraphs that keeps scrolling into viewport behave differently, and then when I see them for the first time, and when I see them for the many times over then, so that I can be aware whether I'm reading a text I've seen once or never before. So that's possible. That's possible on the web, and that's impossible to implement in any reader or stuff like that. Well, I can see there are no more questions. So thanks much to coming. Thanks much for coming here. And if there's any question later, just feel free to write it into the comments or anywhere, actually. So bye.